Hey everyone, my name's Sarah Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. About 3-ish years ago, coming up on 4, I released my very first YouTube video called What is Labor? And so it has been a few years. We have had a few upgrades and I've continued teaching for the last 4 years. And so I thought it would be important for us to revisit that foundational topic. If you have seen some of my other YouTube videos on a lot of things related to labor, this to me is the most important message that you need to understand going forward. It's important in all my classes. If we are gonna understand labor, we need to know what's actually happening in there and how we determine whether or not it's actually labor or not. And so that's what we're gonna do today. But before I do that, make sure you subscribe down below, give it a like, share it with a friend, and then let's talk all about labor. If we go back to my very first YouTube video, I released a video called What is Labor? My head is cut off in half of it. I took it on my iPhone, stacked up on a bunch of books. And so I thought it would be important that we revisit this topic. Like I said before, this is the most important thing. And going forward, if you are to watch any more of my YouTube videos, there's some terminologies, there's some concepts that you sort of have to understand in order to understand what I'm talking about in so many of the other ones, especially when we talk about vaginal exams related to labor. So today I'm gonna share with you exactly what is labor. How do we know what's happening inside your body? Because there was a moment in my nursing career as a labor and delivery nurse where I was at the bedside and I had this ding, ding, ding moment where all of a sudden it all made sense to me. Prior to there, I knew what labor was. I was seeing births happen, but I hadn't totally conceptualized this concept to the point that I did in that moment, which completely changed how I approach my teaching on labor thereafter, how I teach nurses currently, how I teach you here. And so let's talk about it. Now, if we go back to anatomy, we need to understand there are some structures in the body. We have the uterus, that's a muscle. It's normally this big. I go this big because that's how big my uterus is right now. It sits under kind of where your bladder is. So if you press on your lower abdomen and you're like, ooh, that makes me feel like I have to pee, behind that is your uterus. It's about the size of your fist when you're not pregnant. Now, that starts here and then it becomes a watermelon throughout your pregnancy. So it is a muscle. That muscle contracts just like a muscle contracts in your body. You squeeze your muscles, it gets firm. And so that contraction can lead to the birth of the baby. Now, that muscle surrounds your baby. It keeps them safe. Inside is that placenta. Your placenta is gonna stick on the side of the uterus. That's all the blood flow to and from the baby. If you want all of this, this is in my childbirth class, so make sure you click the link down below to go get that, because I explain this at length in my childbirth class. So there's placenta stuck onto the uterus, and then inside the uterus muscle is the baby hanging out in there, hopefully head down, kind of smushed in there as much as possible. You also have the pelvic structures. This is for sure my favorite part of the body. I pretty much carry one of these around with me everywhere I go. I have mini pelvi, I have middle-sized pelvis, I have big pelvis. And so if you understand the pelvis, if you understand the anatomy of the body, you can understand a lot more things. That's why we're starting here, okay? So you have the pelvis. Now in the pelvis, the baby is going to navigate down and out through a bone. And notice, this is a firm structure. There's a lot they have to do to wiggle their way down and out, okay? So this is in the way, but it's also not entirely in the way because there's a hole in the pelvis that baby has to twist and turn and go through. But they can go through. You don't have to completely change the pelvis. Now it does move a little bit to create some space depending on where the baby's at. Really what needs to move and what keeps you pregnant is a structure called your cervix. So you'll see me in my childbirth classes do this. You'll see me teach about the cervix in other ways. It's always a fist, okay? This fist is a sphincter type muscle. Now this muscle of the cervix also is a part of the uterus. So you imagine big balloon, okay? I'm gonna just pretend this is the entire uterus, okay? This would be a very big uterus. Not totally impossible to be this big, but imagine this is my big pregnant belly. All of white is uterus. At the base is the cervix, okay? The cervix is the bottom opening part of this entire muscle. So you think about the shape of a balloon, how there's that neck of the balloon that opens and lets the air in and out. When it's closed, the air stays in. When it's open, the air comes out. Same thing goes for your baby, all right? We need baby to stay inside. That's why we love the cervix, okay? That cervix, we want rock solid. We want it as the plug, keeping baby inside while you're pregnant. Now come 38, 37, let's say. 37 is considered term. So if you go into labor at 37 weeks, great, perfect. Baby's all formed in there. We assume everything's gonna be okay. Prior to that, it would be considered preterm. So once you hit 37 weeks, we're like, hey, yo, I'm tired of being pregnant. I don't want to do this anymore. And so we need that cervix to no longer block the baby from coming out. So you have baby on the cervix like this, and then at the bottom part is the vagina. All right. So you think if we're looking at me here, pelvis, cervix is in here, and then we have vagina hole out here. So there's this space between the cervix and outside world, which is this vagina. Your vagina is usually about 4 inches-ish. We need baby to come into vagina, so we need cervix gone, so baby can just go whoop, vagina, outside world, okay? So the cervix is the magic location. So then that leads me to what is labor? Labor, by definition, is when your cervix changes with contractions. How does the cervix change? It thins out. So it starts out super thick, right? And then it gets paper thin. You can go back to my original vaginal exam video where it effaces. That's the medical terminology for that. It goes to paper thin, like a rubber band, super stretchy, right? It also, I did this, it dilates. So if I am cervix here in baby, I'm not going through a hole this big, okay? But we need this cervix to open up and let the baby through vagina, outside world. All right. Now, how does that happen? Sometimes it can happen without contractions. That's going to be extremely rare. That's actually a medical diagnosis. We don't want that because we want your cervix like the plug keeping baby inside until the time is right. But once we hit term, we want it to thin out and eventually dilate. The way that happens is through contractions. So your sure sign of labor, how you know you're in labor, is by the way the contractions are coming. And contractions will start weak, they'll get stronger, and eventually you'll have your baby. Now, what do the contractions do? Hopefully, okay, we go back to labor, they change your cervix. So with the pressure of pushing and squeezing onto that cervix, that pressure helps to thin this out and eventually for it to disappear. But you can have contractions without cervical change or this thinning and dilating thing, right? Now, you may be like, ow, I have contraction, or ooh, prodromal labor. You've seen all my videos on this. If you haven't, I got them for you. Go check those out, right? So you have these contractions. If your cervix doesn't change, it's still thick, it's still not really thinning out rapidly, it's not dilating, you are not in labor, despite contractions. But eventually those contractions become stronger. Like if we have we have something super firm, right? I can press on it, right? And eventually it will start to maybe thin out and dilate. But if I'm barely pressing and I have just these weak contractions, that's not enough strength to help this cervix change. It needs force, it needs pressure, it needs massage, right? And so if we don't really put enough strength behind the contractions, your cervix isn't gonna change. That's why those irregular, weakish contractions, we don't expect them to do much to the cervix. But once they start getting stronger, then eventually the cervix starts responding. It starts thinning out and dilating, and that's when we know that you're in labor. How do we actually know that? By a vaginal exam. This is why I have 2 videos on vaginal exams, so check those out. I will link everything here, either in a card above or down below, so you can check those out because we check inside and we're checking for dilation, opening, and effacement, and then also how high or low the baby is in the pelvis, because the baby's floating around up here, that's not very close to birth, right? Versus I reach in and I'm like, oh, there's the baby's head. We're getting much closer to delivery, right? Because of common sense that we want baby to go out the vagina, hopefully, right? So we check that by a vaginal exam. Unless we check you, we don't really know what's going on. We can see the signs. We can say, ooh, she's having painful contractions. You're having more rectal pressure. This looks really intense. Something's clearly happening there. But until we actually either open your legs and look and we see your baby, which we would not see until your baby has come through the cervix. So when we talk about dilation, be very clear. We're talking about inside the body. This is not my vagina hole dilating. This is my cervix inside of me, so that when it's out of the way, baby can come into the vagina. You push and eventually appear and actually see the head on the vagina hole, and then eventually have your baby. So that entire process is labor. So labor, by definition, is cervix changing with contractions. If your cervix is not changing, you're having Braxton Hicks or false labor contractions. They're great. They are helpful because it means your body's brewing something. There's some hormone changes happening in there. Your body's getting ready. It's practicing. But unless your cervix is changing, you're not technically in labor. So if you have more questions about that, make sure you hit up my childbirth classes. That will talk you through the entire process, start to finish. I have coping with labor classes to help you cope with what that feels like. And then I do have a slew of other videos where hopefully now that you know this, it will make more sense to you when I talk about vaginal exams. So I hope you found that really helpful. Make sure you share this with your pregnant friends or your pregnant moms or your mom groups to help them really understand the basis of what we're talking about when we talk about labor and dilation, effacement, baby coming down. I was 6 centimeters. What does that even mean? We're talking about your cervix here, okay? Cervix, magic word. If you want more from me, you can head onto the description box, go over to bundlebirth.com. Everything's over there, tons of different other classes and services, and you need help in your pregnancy, we got you there. And then make sure you subscribe down below. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. There's more happening over on Instagram. You can stay connected over there. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon. Bye. YouTube, back at it. Here we are. Loud, sorry, I talk loud. We're out of practice. Got a little bit of titty going there. Help the girls out. Not out, we don't want them out. Pull them up and perk them out. It's like the size of a penis. Yeah. Why am I talking about that? I feel very weird saying penis. I can talk all about vaginas, but the moment I say penis, I'm like, I'm uncomfortable. Need to get over that. Okay. Whoo, I'm sweating. Not totally unimpossible, but totally unimpossible. Bye.